If you work for the Catholic Church and want to transform the culture of your parish and put more souls in the pews, we are here to help. I'm John Kahns, and today I am not joined by my co-host Tai Hua. We could not get our schedules lined up, but this is the Catholic Ministry Professionals Podcast, your favorite leadership development podcast for Catholic churches. Each week, you can expect engaging discussions, expert interviews, and actionable advice to help you move Jesus' mission forward in your parish. Today, we're discussing 3 considerations to keep in mind while leading a parish cluster. So I live in a rural community, and we have clusters of parishes all the time, new clusters that are being reformed. Our diocese just redid the deanery boundaries. I know just north of us, the Sioux Falls Diocese has done a restructure. Parish clusters are a reality that we live in as Catholic ministry professionals. And it's true that there are a lot of just practical realities that we have to discuss that become a part of a parish cluster. But it's important to stop and consider some of the critical factors that can also impact the success of this significant transition. And it's a tall task for anybody who leads a pastor or a parish. That could be pastors, it could be Catholic ministry professionals, it could be volunteers who are big members of the parish. Either way, grouping a bunch of parishes together isn't simply a matter of just combining resources or church buildings. It's about taking 2 communities with distinct traditions, histories, and people and making them one. And these challenges, they do require careful thought. They require prayerful discernment. But if you listen to this episode, I promise you that you will have some clarity about how to handle these new realities of your parish with intentionality. Parish clusters, they can lead to a really strong and vibrant community that is even better equipped to fulfill the mission of the church. So before we dive into this topic that we're going to uncover for the next 3 weeks, before doing that, I want us to look at one key scripture verse. And that is to look at Proverbs 16, verse 3. Commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. Now we have to remember, as parish leaders, it's crucial that we commit every aspect of this process to God, trusting that he will guide the way by aligning his actions, his will, our actions, his will, to ensure that the cluster, this grouping of parish, these people that you serve, that they are able to align themselves with the greater reality of the kingdom and how God is seeking to make his will known among his people. And so again, to remember, Proverbs 16, verse 3, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. We need to remember that before we take any action, that this is God's will being manifest in our community. And so we need to go to prayer. We need to ask God for guidance. And that's one overarching thing, a verse that we need to keep in mind, a reality that we need to keep close to heart, is that God is not outside of this imposing it, but he is inside of it already working and cultivating the souls present, and you are partnering with him in that action. So if you are in a reality where you have an impending grouping of parishes that are on the future, or if you're in the midst of one and you found it really difficult to begin aligning these distinct parishes, and whether it's a merger or whether it's a parish cluster, these distinct communities, and making them one, here's 3 things to really consider that can help you to move forward instead of staying stuck in the past. The first of these is to consider setting the vision for the future. I was a part of a parish that had been one of the first groupings of parishes, the first mergings of parishes in the Archdiocese of Chicago. And they were 3 years, I believe, into their process of merging, 2 years into a 3-year process, I think it was. And they had spent that first year trying to form the mission, trying to form the vision for their community. And then the next year trying to convince people like, hey, this is a good thing. And in the 3rd year, they were going to begin really like aligning things. You know, it's essential, right? That it's not bad to spend time reflecting on the vision for the future of a new merged parish. That's a good thing. You need to think about what are the long-term goals for this community. You know, what are the new ministry opportunities that could come and emerge as a part of this cluster? And then you need to really think about, okay, how are we going to ensure that the new parish is united in mission and vision? So we have to think about all of those pieces, you know, how the cluster will enhance the parish's ability to evangelize, to serve others. What are the opportunities here that are before us that aren't possible without all of us, right? What are those opportunities to serve? There may be needs in the other parish. Maybe one's a poorer parish and the other parish has plenty of money. What does it mean for both communities if we can share those resources? What new opportunities for outreach and ministry are available by combining resources, by looking at the needs of the other parish and meeting there together? How will you keep that vision alive? And I think, despite all of this, one of the things that I found in that previous parish where they were 2 years into a 3-year process is they drew it out so much. They were trying to let the people lead the vision. And so this is the thing I really want to keep in mind as we consider all of these pieces and make people a part of the process is though the pastor and the leadership team of the parish need to set and lead the vision. Right? You can open this up to all the discussion, but if you do that, you're going to end up with 100 different opinions about how this looks. Instead, the pastor, in the divine authority bestowed upon him by the laying on of hands of his bishop, right, in line with the vision of the bishop for the diocese, the pastor needs to lead this vision, and the team needs to line up behind him. There is a real spiritual authority that is present in our church, a hierarchy that is true, and that leads all the way from the lowest person up to God. But we need to honor that hierarchy. And it has been my experience, if the pastor and the leadership team are united in the vision behind the reality of the pastor, then there is a lot of room for fertile soil to be cultivated, right? And if you open it up to everybody, you're never going to land. You're never going to land. So that's why the impetus for everything that comes needs to line up under the vision established through the bishop, the pastor, the team, and passed on to the people. And then the people from there can take it and they can begin to think about, okay, how do we line ourselves up with this vision that is established by the pastor? So that's the first one. You got to set the vision for the future. All right, the second one, and this one's a little tougher pill to swallow, especially if you didn't receive great leadership training, especially if you're, maybe like me, a little bit of a people pleaser. You want to keep people happy. Hard decisions are going to have to be made. That's number 2. Hard decisions will have to be made. You have to make your peace with it. Right? With parishes that are becoming one, that are beginning to think as a group, these difficult decisions are going to come with it. Some traditions that have been cherished may need to be let go. And I would even say, even if you're not a merging parish or a cluster of parishes, there's still a reality that you have younger people and older people in your parish. And there's some ministries that they're just clinging to that need to go the wayside so that you have the bandwidth you need to bring in the younger generations and make them a part of the work that you're doing. Either way, some traditions that have been cherished may need to be let go of. There may be redundancies in staff that either that need to be addressed. Either somebody's not going to be working there anymore, or their position is going to change so that gaps in the new structure can be filled. And some people, they're just going to be resistant to the change, right? I think that even is the most challenging piece, is that people in general don't like change, and there's certain people that are going to feel like they're losing their identity, especially some places they were a founding member of that parish. It's not that old, and yet it still is at a point where it's being clustered together with other parishes. So they might feel like they're losing their identity. So you have to make your peace with the fact that these decisions are necessary for the long-term health and vitality of the new parish. Now, that said, these choices, these conversations that you have, they always need to be made with the utmost care, with empathy, but they're still unavoidable. You will have to have those conversations. And Jesus was no stranger to this, right? Remember, Jesus is our model. He bore those burdens of the decisions of leadership, of his stewardship, of his shepherding of his people. He bore the burdens of that, and he bore them well. He did suffer in them. But our goal then is, when we are faced with a really tough decision, we've got to tell someone, hey, there's no room for your position in this parish. Or we have to tell Ethel, like, hey, you've been great leading this committee and this ministry, but the time has come for us to focus on something new. Whatever that burden is, their cries, their tears, their yells, their frustration, the ways that they're going to talk about you in the community, these are real opportunities for you to unite your suffering to Jesus as you move through this transition, through these difficult decisions. And when you do that, when you, instead of becoming a part of the rumor mill, instead of exacerbating the issue, when you unite these sufferings to Jesus, then he can do something really beautiful with them. And you may not see the fruit of it in your time, but the fruit will be there. So lean into Jesus, lean into his strength, trusting that he will guide you as you bear the weight of leadership in your role in this grouping of parishes as you move forward. And we have to remember, like, this is true through all of Scripture, right? This reality that we have to bear our burdens, we have to bear them well. We think about Joshua 1:19, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Remember, God is with you in this. Like, this is really his vision going forward for your community, right? God is with us, even in the tough decisions. So we just have to remember that this is the role of the Christian. This is what it is to follow God. And so we just have to make our peace with it, bear it well, and unite our sufferings to Jesus in those moments. And then number 3, I think this is something that as you seek to take many parts and make them one, there's a reality that there will be some changes. Grieve the old. Allow them to grieve. You don't have to fix their grief, but you can enter into grief with a community if something's changing. Especially, sometimes a parish school has to be closed, or, one particular church becomes a worship site, but it's not an actual parish, or maybe it has to be closed in general. People really grieve these things. Grieve the old, but allow them opportunity to celebrate the new. Okay. So this is just where you're going to have to be human with them, and allow yourself to be excited for the future, but also not be afraid to enter into grieving with those who are grieving. And it's important to allow parishioners to grieve the traditions they leave behind. Empathy is vital during this time, as it helps people to feel heard, validated. But again, we can't stay there, right? Joy is the mark of the Christian. Joy is essential. Celebrating new community, new opportunities, and just growth that's going to come from the result of people meeting together who haven't particularly been mixing in the same pools. They haven't been meeting together. You do one large community gathering and really invite people to go, and then share the goodness that comes out of that. They're going to have fun. You got to lead with joy, lead with hope. And this is going to help you to unite the community. And instead of saying, we're not going to touch on this subject, you got to breach the conversation, so that even as you're doing like a large group community, you might have that everybody's gathered there and people are excited about this new thing. But you can also say, hey, we don't want to forget that people coming from a different parish down the road, that they are equally a part of this, and they might be a little bit sad. Like, let's not skirt around that conversation, but rather let's acknowledge it, shake our heads, nod in agreement, say yeah, but then like open up, okay, here's where we're going, and this is good. And with that, we can move on to the devil's advocate. It's just not the same without Ty. We miss you, Ty. All right, objection. The devil's advocate. Here we go. All these considerations are great, but at the end of the day, our focus should be on the logistics, right? People want to know when the merge is happening, what it will look like. We can't keep talking about emotions and traditions. We just need to get things done. So I would say to that, right, if you're somebody who thinks along those lines, you're more the detail-oriented person, that's absolutely correct. Yes, that is understandable. It's important to focus on those practical needs. But the temptation can be to only focus on those. And when we do that, we miss the most important thing in ministry, which is the people that we serve, right? When we just focus on the logistical, and it can be really easy to do that as a parish staff or as somebody who's just like looking from the box, you're the chess master and you're just moving the chess pieces. Like, it can be really easy to just think about the practicals. We have to remember that we serve people and people have needs, and you need to meet them in that messiness. Like, that's really where Jesus is working, in that heart to heart. So yes, you have to discuss staff assignments. You have to discuss building decisions and budget management. Those are necessary, but without considering the actual people, their traditions, I mean, the process is going to lack that unity, the buy-in that you really need to move it forward quicker, to really align yourself, like the movement of this, towards expediency, right? And having all those pieces in place, those conversations ahead of time, helps you to create that unified community, and it helps you to achieve what you want, which is to move it forward quicker and to figure out those logistical components. And of course, we never want to send you on your way without giving you some actionable steps that you can take today to really think about, to take and use from our conversation. So The first one is this. I know we're worried when you run a parish cluster about making different decisions and affecting people, but here's the number one thing I want you to keep in mind. Most people just want to be heard. So create opportunities for parishioners to express their concerns, their feelings, their desires. Listening is the first step in building trust and engagement through the process. Listening is not saying this is what we're going to do. Listening. If you give people a chance to be heard, they're way more open to then when the decision, if the decision doesn't fall their way, when it doesn't fall their way, they're way more open because they know they were heard, received, and listened to. And then they can trust a little better that, yeah, you did consider their opinion. You just decided to go a different way. All right. You saw something bigger. All right. Number two, build the vision by getting buy-in from key parishioners, right? You know, there are going to be people who are on board, people who are on the fence, and people who are going to be against it. What you want, though, is to identify in those different groups influential leaders. You want to know those 2, 3, 4 people who really are going to love this new direction and get them together in the same room, start talking about this. You're going to want to get those people are kind of just, whatever, I'll go whichever way. Talk to them about how this is a good thing so they can start evangelizing for you. And especially if you know that there are some people who are going to hate it, it's worth having a conversation with them about where you're going and why, trying to get some buy-in with them ahead of time, but keeping in mind that if they are dead set against the vision that you as a pastor or you as the leadership team are setting, if they're dead set against it, they don't deserve the bulk of your time. The bulk of your time is towards building God's vision in your parish, and eventually people will be won over to that, but you have to give the bulk of your attention, energy, and effort with this idea that there's no sense disagreeing, we're going to move forward. And finally, number 3, if you've got this if you are a cluster of parishes and you feel God is calling you to something new, to kind of refresh, to kind of really unite our identity, you need to identify some concrete dates for moving the initiative forward. Concrete dates. Maybe you just received this. Maybe you're a couple years into the process. What you need to do is set some concrete dates on the calendar, because what that allows you to do is it allows you to signal to your people that, hey, this is coming. So we're going to talk about it. It gives you significant milestones in the process so you know that and can feel that and experience that you are moving forward, even though it can feel really murky and muddy at times and really slow. You know you are moving forward. And finally, it just shows to your parishioners like, hey, this is where we're going, right? So now we want to be very intentional about leading that direction. All right, with that, thank you for listening to the Catholic Ministry Professionals podcast. Next week, we are going to expand on this topic with 3 specific things the Catholic ministry professionals can do to effectively lead through a transition like this. If you found this episode helpful, please take a few seconds to text it to a priest or a friend in ministry that could benefit with it. And with that, we'll see you in the vineyard.